Upskill, like I mentioned, I will have slides on each of these, but Upskill is important for any student, whether they're university, whether they're high school, and even for us professionals. So I want to pause for a minute on Upskill, and I want to ask all of you what you see are some areas that students need to develop a bit more. What are some skills that you would like to see them have developed a bit more? So I know I had a conversation with Jacqueline earlier this week, and she was saying she was looking at doing perhaps a email etiquette workshop for her students. So what are some other areas that you all are seeing that your students might not have the skills that they need, but might be something that we could look at ensuring that they do have? Research skills, communication skills. Thank you for typing in. Writing skills.
Interview preparation skill, or communication.
Mm-hmm. Yep, communication, interview preparation, time management. So a lot of those soft skills looks like students are needing. I will talk a little bit more about what we can do to perhaps collaborate and look at ways to work together to ensure students have these a little bit later on. So, but this provides really good information for what we can do. Social skills, CV writing, project management, communication, perfect. Time management, especially now, right? With everyone being at home and not sure you're knowing what time it is, or time management, excellent. Thank you.
It is very important also to highlight the employer's perspective, and this is mostly for the university people who are with us today, is that from our research, we have identified that the employers often speak about the skills gap. Even for undergrad or graduate students, when they go for internships or even when they go to apply for jobs, this is always one of the major challenges they find. So I think it's a very important area that we can further dive deeper, perhaps in another session, and see also from the university's perspective, what is the profile of your graduates? What kind of tools and skills you want them to have?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Sini, for that. And I think what you mentioned, that this might be good, and perhaps when we get to the end and we talk about opportunities for collaboration, that might be something for us to look at a little bit deeper and see what we can do to ensure that we are supporting students not for their own development, not just for their own development, but to ensure that they have the required skills to be successful whenever they get into the workplace. So thank you for that, Sini. Okay, so I want to start and talk a little bit about, again, these are things students can do now while they're at home. Many students, I don't know if you all ask these questions early on with your high school students, but I've met with university students too who don't even know where to start. Maybe they started in a degree and they're rethinking, is this right for me? So first thing that students can do is to start to identify study areas of interest if they're in high school, or career areas of interest. I put them hand in hand because one leads to another, right? So they can start off by doing things like personality or inventories, career interest inventories, different things like that online to provide a little bit of a general direction for them. I've got a few services listed here that I'd like to invite Sini to talk about: the QCDC Career Advising Service, as well as the Career Guide app. So Sini, can I ask you to speak to those two things?
Thank you, Paige. So QCDC has developed, together with one American industry agency, a tailored online resource platform, which includes different modules. So each module is covering different aspects, starting from self-awareness. We have two types of different inventories on interests and values that the students can use, of course, with the guidance of the counselor or academic advisor. And then we provide them with resources about planning for their academic journey. We have a list of different universities in Qatar, and there is also the link to the Ministry of Education and Higher Education and the Office for Sponsorships. We do have another module which provides a tool set of different formats for CVs, for essay writing, for professional development plan, and so on, that they could work step by step from early onwards. The system is actually applied already across public secondary schools in Qatar for students in grade 10. And we are also working closely with Qatar Foundation in order for this opportunity to be implemented in our own schools. And it is also available for students who are graduate from secondary education. We have been used that also in the past together with the APP for their own students. And it's a very comprehensive platform in the sense that it allows also the student to share the profile with different institutions while they are applying for university, or if they want to share their profile with different employers. This is about the career advising system. Now, about the career guide, so it's a very valuable tool. It's a printed edition that started from the Qatar Career Development Center, and we now have moved into an online version. It's offered in digital format as well as on mobile app. So we will be sharing also with all of you these resources for you to be able to look at, and perhaps you can take also some useful information that you can implement with your students.
Thank you, Sini. And yes, as Sini mentioned, the app is a really, really good source. It even provides a bit of an information of different career paths, and it's very clear and easy to use. So I would definitely recommend you download it and take a look through it and see how you can utilize that information and pass the information on to your students, because it is a free app. One thing I do want to also mention with this identifying study and career areas of interest is, yes, students can conduct these different interest or personality or career inventories, but it is also helpful, again, to make sure that they've reflected on their own values, because this is just one source that can provide them with a bit of direction, but we want to ensure that they've thought about what's meaningful to them, what's important to them, and that they can reach their future goals. So when I used to advise students at UQ, they would sometimes come in with their results, and then we would talk through, okay, what does this career cluster look like to you, or what does this sort of area look like to you? Is that really what you're interested in? So this is one piece of the puzzle. I know sometimes students might come to you and say, can you just tell me what you think I should study? Obviously, that's not the way it works. So one source to help put together the whole picture for the students. And I'd like to ask, was there a question, by the way, that came through? I'll take a look at that in a minute. But I do want to know, I think we've heard from one school already who utilizes some inventories in their platform. Are there other schools or universities that do utilize, whether it's Myers-Briggs or the Holland Code? Does anyone utilize any of these inventories? And if so, which ones do you utilize with your school? Feel free to type your answer or speak up. Otherwise, I will continue to move on. Okay, so Holland's Code, Myers, yep, Basic, yep, Holland Code. Okay. So once students have hopefully identified an area of study that they might be interested in, or a career direction of study, the next thing for them to do is to really research a bit about those industries or that university. Now, first thing I want to mention, I've got this as the last dot point, but it is actually the first thing I want to mention, is particularly in our current situation, it is important to encourage students not to just think about maybe one industry that they could work in, but really to reflect again on their own skills and how those skills could be transferred into other industries. So I want to emphasize that that is particularly important. I know that some students want to pigeonhole themselves into one area, and for some that might be great, but it is really important, I think, to think about where else they can look for the study that they're interested in or the career that they're interested in, not just one industry. So I want to mention that. With regards to researching, one of the best ways to research an area of interest, let's say if they're interested in marketing, for example, encourage your students to reach out and to connect with people who are currently working in that field. That by conducting these informational interviews, the students can gather a lot of information, and they can do this while they're at home. They can connect with people on LinkedIn. They can utilize their family members or their friends family members to ask questions about what it might be like to work in that industry. And I think what's really important too is to help guide the students as to what questions they should ask. So again, reflecting on what's important to them. Do they want, flexible work hours? They want to be able to contribute to the greater good, whatever it might be. Help them come up with tailored questions to ask those people. And same thing with universities. If they want to know what life is like in a university, encourage them to reach out to other to alumni of that university or current students. So when I worked at the University of Queensland, I sat in the same office as our study abroad advisors. And one of the universities that they had a partnership with was actually my alma mater. And I would always encourage my colleagues to let them know if they had any students who were interested in the University of Texas, which is where I did my undergrad, to send them my way. That I'd be more than happy to chat with them. And many people are honestly happy to discuss their own background, their own experience. So I know it could be out of the comfort zone of students, but I would encourage them to start doing that now. It's the best way to gather information is by conducting these informational interviews. I would also encourage students to consider emerging industries. So as we know, Qatar is one of the leading countries in the arts scene. We've really put ourselves on the map here. So have students think about that industry or have them think about entrepreneurship. So rather than going into an existing company, what they can do now to create their own startup. So I've got a couple of resources here. Bidaya is an organization that I have Sini talk about, as well as the Qatar Science and Technology Park. So Sini, would you like to talk just a little bit about those?
Yeah, thank you, Paige. So I expect that most of you are familiar with Bidaya. They have been around for a number of years, and they do offer different workshops and initiatives to support entrepreneurship, especially for the youth here. For Qatar Science and Technology Park, they have their own incubation center, and we are planning together with QCDC to initiate a new program that is going to be intended for high school students in particular, to explore more about opportunities in entrepreneurship and specifically in the field of ICT.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So I'm going to go ahead and move on, but this is just a bit of structure onto researching industries or universities of interest. I want to then move to networking. So no, students can't go to in-person networking events right now, but that doesn't mean that they can't actually network. If they don't have a LinkedIn profile, encourage them maybe to start one. Even if they're in high school, they can use their time if they can put on a blazer or something, have their family member take a picture of them, and set up their profile. It will be helpful for them to start to figure out how to utilize LinkedIn, who to take a look at, how to reach out to people. I know when I actually first moved to Doha, I used LinkedIn. I still use LinkedIn quite often, but I actually connected with Sini. So Sini was one of the first people who actually was open to having a chat with me. So it's really, really relevant and really useful. So I would highly recommend encouraging your students to utilize LinkedIn. They can also get involved with school or university networks. There's still online clubs or groups that they can participate in, or even to seek a mentor. So those of you with students, whether they're high school or university, are there other online networking initiatives or platforms that you are encouraging your students to get involved with? Feel free to type or to speak. And many students don't necessarily know the value of networking. Even in university level, they think that some students might think it's just social. But I always tell students the statistic around up to 80% of people find jobs through someone you know. And it is very important to not only to find a job, but to gather information about those roles, as we were talking about, to learn a little bit more, to connect with people who can help support you in your journey, wherever that might be. Even as a professional, it's important to continue with your network, and hence the reason we're doing this Career Cafe, so that everyone can engage with one another. So maybe something that you could advise your students is to think about their own online network. What do they currently have? Do they have anything? And how can you help them start to create something? All right, so seeking online experiences. So obviously, again, your students might have had part-time job lined up or some kind of volunteer experience. Maybe they were going to go abroad over the summer. They probably had quite a few exciting things planned, and we don't know what this summer will hold. So encourage your students to think about what sort of online experiences they can find. One of the things I always highlight with students is, rather than having students wait for an opportunity to be posted, but to create one for themselves. So if you've got a student who's really, really interested in a particular organization, encourage them to reach out to that organization and say, I really like the work that you're doing. I'm thinking of studying this area. I'm going to be here over the summer. Is there a way that I can get involved with your organization? Even if that organization doesn't have any opportunities posted, I would encourage your students to make an opportunity happen for themselves. There are some volunteer opportunities that I think are offering some online initiatives over the summer. I've put a few of those links there for different volunteer opportunities. You can take a look at them. Qatar Volunteers seems to collate all of the different volunteer opportunities that are posted, so that's a good one. Qatar Red Crescent, Ministry of Public Health, they've got the one for supporting with COVID. Now, I did just go onto that one yesterday, and it wouldn't let me click on apply now, so I'm not 100% sure if they are still taking volunteers for that, but it's worthwhile to check out. So again, like we heard at the beginning, collate some of these resources for your students, put them together and encourage them to get in touch with these organizations to see how they can go about volunteering for them. Sina, you look like you wanted to add something. Did you want to add something to that, or no?
No, I think we are okay. Just to be mindful also about the time, to leave some time also for Q&As.
Okay, perfect. I will move on a little bit quicker then. So upskilling is obviously very important. Now, these resources I have here, many of you probably know about, and I would say these are good for any student as well as any professional. A couple of things that I do want to mention. If you're familiar with a MOOC, so massive online open course, there's some really, really good ones out there. There is one that the university I used to work at UQ, put together called Unlocking Your Employability. That one actually goes through what is employability, so same as career development, what that looks like, reflection elements. It's really cool because you can actually see where people around the world are utilizing it. So I saw, I think 5 people here in Qatar are utilizing it. So take a look at that for yourself. But many of you are probably familiar with all of these upskill sources, but do encourage your students, rather than thinking about how sad they might be that they didn't get the chance to do the things that they had planned over the summer, think about what they could do instead. So are they interested in learning a language? Or are they interested in learning Microsoft Excel? Pretty much anything that they wanted to learn, there are lots of free resources out there. So I would encourage your students to take a look at those things, and yourself as well. So lastly, we've got a few slides here. I want to talk about opportunities for us as career practitioners. So we've gone through a lot of things that you can do to encourage your students and what you can do to support their own growth, but there are things that you can do to support your own development too. And I just want to mention a few resources. One thing I have mentioned there, first thing, is this book. I don't know if you can see it. It's called What Color is Your Parachute? It's a really good book. It provides some tangible information, some different ideas to think about For interest inventories, he's got this different flower method. So it's a really, really interesting book. I would recommend that for practitioners. Got a list of webinars here as well from different professional associations. So there's a few coming up on May 15th on the role of parents and carers and providing career guidance, gap years. I do also want to mention, I'm going to pull up my phone here, that I saw that Michael Page is offering a free webinar tomorrow, and it's titled Building a Resilient Approach for Your Job Search During COVID-19. So I thought that that looked pretty interesting if any of you were interested tomorrow. So that's there.
Just to add that the presentation together with the recording from today's session will be shared with all the participants. So don't worry, we will be emailing everything to you so you can access it. And regarding the webinars, these are provided from professional bodies. So from NCDA in the US, from CERIC in Canada, from CDI in UK. And you can also earn some additional educational credit hours. For those of you who have licenses and accreditations, and this is also an important element to make sure that you don't fall short in your professional development.
Thank you, Sini. And I'd like to ask, because as we mentioned at the very beginning, I think Alia, you mentioned that you've been putting together some resources and free webinars for students. Has anyone come across a webinar that they would highly recommend, either for our own development or for students that they would recommend? Feel free to speak up or to chat, type in the chat any webinars you might recommend. It's always helpful. I know sometimes it might require a bit of digging online to find things. So if someone has something that they would recommend, great to hear. I'll move on and allow you to chat into the function. So additional opportunities for career practitioners. I think one of the highlights that I want to mention with this is the opportunity for us as practitioners to collaborate with one another. It doesn't have to be collaboration within your school. It can be collaboration with other schools, with other universities, with other organizations. I think that this pause in our standard lives allows for time to really reflect on what services we are doing well, what we aren't doing well, and where we want to see improvements. So as we mentioned earlier, with some of the skills that you're thinking that students probably could utilize a little bit more development of, that's an area that we might consider looking at collaborating together. Jacqueline, I'd like to invite you to speak about the Qatar Career Network. Earlier this week, I'll just mention Sini and Jacqueline and myself had a fantastic call and just had a lot of good ideas that come of it. So I'd like to invite you to speak a little bit about the Qatar Career Network and the idea behind that.
Okay, well, hold on, I'll get my video here in a minute. Sorry, my cat keeps going back and forth, so I just did with that discussion. So I've been involved in a number of different groups since I've been in Qatar, and one of the things that I got involved in last year with the local school counselors was a WhatsApp group, as well as I was already involved in an email group. But we created a WhatsApp group to bring us together and to be able to share collective information. And so I brought this idea up to Paige and Sini because I thought this is just a little bit of a different shift. Now, some of the groups some of the people in the groups might be the same, but because we also have some university practitioners who are here looking at career information, I thought it might be good to create one of those. So I have started a WhatsApp group, and I will share the link so people can sign up for that group. And then we can share information between us and even begin deciding on other ways that we might be able to collaborate and create opportunities for each other. Because one of the things that I mentioned before with Paige and Sini, I'm thinking of doing some things for my students over the summer, but it might be nice to have others who can help me develop the programs that I'm interested in. And so I would be looking for some additional resources. And maybe some people have great skills in other areas. that I don't have. And so by teaming up, we could help benefit each other as far as that's concerned.
Thank you. And I think having a WhatsApp group would be great for us to share, webinars that we find or links that are interesting, or if you've seen something online that might be useful, or again, to discuss collaboration. So this is something that we are looking at, or that we've started. So Jacqueline will send out the link for that. And then Sini had a really good idea too, just a bit of a brainstorm, nothing formal as of yet, but perhaps even to create a bit of a book club under the Qatar Career Network. For those of you who, like, this book that I mentioned here, want to pick up a book, we read it and we discuss at the end of the month. So just any ideas that you might have, you want to collaborate, please utilize this new WhatsApp group to facilitate the sharing of those ideas.
Echoing what both you, Paige, and Jacqueline mentioned, what we are trying actually to do is to create a live ecosystem, because most of the people who are networking, from our past experience, they don't really actually meet frequently, or having a WhatsApp group mostly put burden on our everyday lives, having to look on different messages. So the idea for that is to make it a really helpful community, that we will share resources, we will share also different platforms, we can share also more valuable tools and best practices that we can support each other. And the Career Book Club actually was an idea because there are a number of printed and online resources specifically for career practitioners that perhaps you haven't come across yet. So I think it would be nice to discuss it on a monthly basis and see also how we can enrich our practice.
Excellent. Thank you, Sini. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. We have just a couple of minutes left. Does anyone...
Paige, sorry, before we wrap up, I think it is also important to mention that next week we will be starting the virtual career advising services that we intend to support on this pilot stage, QF schools, high school students, and ABP students as well. So I would like to open a call for everyone from within Qatar Foundation who is with us today, to just share their interest in coming on board for themselves as practitioners, as well as for their students. We will be sharing the information with everyone. I just wanted to give heads up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that reminder. I've got it on this slide. So just very briefly, as Sini mentioned, Sini, Jacqueline, and myself are going to be offering one-on-one career advising sessions for ABP students and QF school students. So if anyone is interested in joining this initiative and providing those services, do feel free to reach out to us. You can also see the list of upcoming events that we've got. But in the remaining few minutes that we've got, are there any questions that anyone would like to ask or pose to the group, or any general comments or thoughts anyone would like to share? Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for coming along today. I hope you found this session beneficial. I think it's a really good way to connect with one another. So we will have one more next week. The time, we've got it at 1 o'clock on this slide. It could be 2 o'clock, so the time is yet to be confirmed. So you'll receive an email invitation on Sunday for that as well. So feel free to come along to that. Bring any questions you've got. The topic is on engaging students virtually during COVID-19 as well as after. So if you've got any...
And we also shared the online survey for our participants before they go to fill in, and so we can understand more about the session.
Exactly, yes. You'll see that link there. It was shared by Munira, who is our IT guru. Thank you, Munira, for your support. So please click on that link, fill out the survey, and we again thank you for coming, and we hope to see you again next week. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.